And Knicks Go is in front as they turn for home. Knicks Go on top, trying to pull off another upset here. Into the final furlong with Game Winner running at him on the outside. The two of them into the final furlong, and they've bumped there. Game Winner on the outside takes the lead. On the inside, it's Knicks Go, who fights on but will be second best as they come down to the line. He doesn't know how to lose. He's Game Winner in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile.
All right, we got Game Winner and why I don't think Game Winner is going to win the Kentucky Derby. And I will start off by saying Game Winner was definitely the most hyped horse coming into this prep race season. I, for one, was very high on Game Winner, and I had a lot of high hopes that Game Winner would would hold on to the form that he had in his 2-year-old year. And I don't want to say that Game Winner hasn't held on to the form that he had last year, but I will say that Game Winner has definitely been disappointing. And I don't even want to say disappointing because both of his losses were narrow. One of them was a nose and one of them was a short head in the Rebel Stakes and Santa Anita Derby, respectively. But it's just Game Winner this year has not looked like the horse that he was last year. You know, I said this in the Game Winner Jaywalk episode, that Game Winner looked like he was a really tough horse, really resilient, especially with the run that he had in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. But I think once again with Game Winner, the problem that I talked about in that episode with 2-year-old champions is that you run your best races as a 2-year-old, and then you come back, you've peaked. And really only great horses have gone from 2-year-old champions to Kentucky Derby winners. American Pharoah did that. American Pharoah is one of the best horses that's come this decade. Now, I want to say with Game Winner, I don't think Game Winner has fallen off a cliff. Game Winner has definitely run a couple of good races. He didn't win either of them, but, he was a very close second to Omaha Beach. It looked like, and I will say this, credit to him, this is the difference between his loss to Omaha Beach and Improbables. I think if you gave Game Winner another 50 to 100 yards in the Rebel Stakes, he goes by Omaha Beach. Whereas it did not look like they could have gone for another mile and Omaha Beach would have held off Improbable. The opportunities for Game Winner to come and show that he was going to maintain the form that he had in his 2-year-old season have come and they've gone. Game Winner really hasn't shown that he's the type of horse that can maintain the top form from his 2-year-old season. And we were posing this question that is the Breeders' Cup Juvenile going to become a race that produces more Kentucky Derby winners? And I think the answer is going to be it really depends on the horse. And you can't look at history and say, well, since this hasn't happened in 30 years, the reason that there were a lot of horses, and I go back to the 70s, and there were a lot of 2-year-old champions in the 70s that had some successes. I point to Riva Ridge, Secretariat, Foolish Pleasure, Seattle Slew, Affirmed, and Spectacular Bid. Those are 5 horses right there that were champion 2-year-olds in the 70s that held on to their form, and 4 of them went on to be really successful as 3-year-olds. Not that Foolish Pleasure wasn't successful. He won the Kentucky Derby, and then he didn't win another big race, although I'm not saying that Foolish Pleasure wasn't a good horse. And then you had Street Sense, Nyquist, American Pharoah, and those are the horses that have won the Kentucky Derby as 2-year-old champions since 1979. So in that time, almost 40 years, 3 horses. So it really depends on the horse. And I just don't think Game Winner is the type of horse that is going to maintain that top form. A lot of horses have that. They have their one good season. Their one season, I don't want to say one good season, but their one season that's better than a lot of their other ones. And for Game Winner, I think it's just that a case of he has peaked, and we're seeing the back end of Game Winner. And the back end of Game Winner could still end up producing a couple of victories. I'm not sure whether or not I said this in the podcast or not, but I think Game Winner is going to be the type of horse that's like Chief's Crown. Chief's Crown was great as a 2-year-old. He won the inaugural running of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. But Chief's Crown was very good as a 2-year-old. And then in his 3-year-old season, Chief's Crown was close, but he was never quite there. He did win the Travers Stakes, but he was 4th in the Kentucky Derby, 2nd in the Preakness, 3rd in the Belmont Stakes, and then he was a non-factor in the Breeders' Cup Classic that year. I think that is something that you're going to see what Game Winner is going to be like this year. So I think Game Winner is a horse that is definitely going to be in the mix, but I think we've seen Game Winner's best races already, and we definitely have not seen the best from Omaha Beach and Roadster and, some of the other horses. I think Game Winner's best races are behind him. That doesn't mean that Game Winner is not going to win some races and be a factor. It's just that Game Winner is, I think, going to be the typical 2-year-old champion who was great as a 2-year-old and then kind of tails off in his 3-year-old year. All right, so that's it for Game Winner. I will see you tomorrow when we will be talking about Code of Honor. If you want more from Racing Rundown, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on any podcast platform. You can also follow us on social media at Racing Rundown Podcast on Instagram and Rundown Racing on Twitter.
Chasing from second, Game Winner on the outside. They are homeward bound now. Rowayton is holding on to the lead. Roadster on the outside, Game Winner. Rowayton just keeps on finding, and Rowayton on the inside, and Game Winner. Roadster's not doing enough. Game Winner is. Game Winner's coming through to win it. Game Winner and Mario Gutierrez have won the Del Mar Futurity.